Hi, it's Todd at Todd's Workshop and Todd Cutler here, and today we are going to make the simplest crossbow ever, based on something called the skein bow. And here it is, little scale model one, good for messing about in the living room, and it shoots pens or pencils. So what is the skein bow? Well, the skein bow does not look like this, to be fair, but it's similar, it's very similar. It's an early 16th century Swedish bow that was recovered from a lake, possibly after a peasant's rebellion, I believe. But either way, it was made to be purely functional and quick and easy and cheap. I've used deliberately the worst bit of timber that I could find around my place. It's a bit of old garden boarding. The only thing that really matters on this is the bow. Now, I've made the bow here in a very simple way, and I'll show you how to do that. But you could do this with a bit of garden cane, bamboo, fiberglass fence posting, even maybe a bit of UPVC piping if that's what you do. The other thing that you can do is you just put any old bit of wood in here and you put elastic bands or bungee cords on it. You can build it small. You can build it big. That one's great for shooting little cardboard men off your cardboard castle on the kitchen table. This one's great for shooting targets in the back garden. Just go and make one. During the build, I've given you some of the dimensions, and it should be enough for most of you to be able to build it. If you want exact dimensions and exact set of drawings, go and follow the link in the description. First, we measure the stock. Now I have done it 4 centimeters, just a simple mark here. I'm just dragging up a straight line. 5 centimeters in here. And then about 2 centimeters from here to here, so about halfway down. So now we are going to cut with our saw along that line, and that line there, and that will become the main stock of the bow. Just going to cut the diagonal now. And the next is to cut the trigger piece. I can use this black line that I've already drawn. We have the stock and the trigger, but I want this trigger to be a little bit shorter. So about here. So I'm just going to cut the end off. And now we have to allow these two pieces to rotate. So what I need to do is to cut a tenon on here and a mortise on here. So what I mean by that is cut it like that. And then we'll cut a slot on here so the two fit together. And we need to cut the mortise into our stock. It's a little bit awkward, this sawing, and be careful of your hands. So you can see I have 2 cuts now. I want to remove this. If you have a chisel, it's easy. If you don't have a chisel, we put another cut in. Be careful again with your hands. So I need to remove these bits of wood now. So I have a Stanley knife, craft knife, and I'm carefully slipping it under. Careful of your hands. Now if you have a chisel, this is much easier. I'm trying to do it with the least tools possible. There we are. So I've removed the wood, and then this fits in now, so it can move. Now what we can do is just cut a slight angle on here, just so that it fits a little nicer. So I've just removed those, and I'm going to trim very carefully with a knife. And there you can see. So what I need to do now is to drill a hole and make the pin so that these two pieces can pivot. I'm just going to put it through there. I've now drilled everything in place, and I'm going to make a dowel for that. So I'm going to cut another piece of wood from here, and then we're going to turn that into a square, and this will become the dowels that we're going to carve for all of this. And we're going to carve this round. So now we have a rotating trigger. The next task is to put the trigger notch in. So that is 19 centimeters from the front, which is just under 8 inches. So we want to saw a little notch, maybe 6-7 millimeters deep. So just put a little saw in, and now I'm just going to cut the corner off here. And just trimming it up a little bit. So we have the notch, but these little corners here, I'm just going to cut them off with the saw and then clean up with the knife. So I have just cleaned off the corners there. The next thing to do is to drill down straight through this top stock and the trigger with our drill. So now we have a hole through both components, and we're going to make a pin for this bottom trigger, again by carving a piece of wood. So we have our peg, and it fits into here, but it's really tight. I can't move anything. So we're going to dismantle this and then fix this pin into place and then carve it. So I can now put that pin back in, and I'm going to saw it off at this point here. But our pin does not go into the hole anymore. So what we need to do is put the trigger and this together, and the pin does not need to come any higher than the top of the stock. So I'm just going to cut it . So we're going to put it back together again. You can see it still does not fit, and that's because this is on a curve. So we're just going to elongate that hole. I'm going to put the drill back in, and I'm just going to do that a little bit with the drill. I'm going to rock it back and forth, and that will open the hole up a bit. And then you can now see opens and closes. So that is what we're going to use to push the string out of the notch. If you're very tight with this fitting, you don't need the glue. Glue always helps. But the problem now is I can open it too much, and I don't want to do that. It makes it harder to get in. So I'm going to drill through here again, about there, and put another pin in. But the idea is that that creates a maximum opener. So I hold my trigger pretty much so the pin is just below the surface here, about like that, and now I'm going to drill the hole in that position and put another pin in. This will all become clear. Here is the stock now with this extra pin at the front, and you can see it no longer opens any more than that. And this stops the whole trigger from opening out too far. We're now going to take these apart again, and I have to put the bolt groove in for our arrow. So I'm just taking my marker again, just drawing 2 parallel lines, and I'm going to use these to cut along. So I'm going to take a craft knife and I'm going to cut at a 45-degree angle down there and there. So I'm doing a not too hard a cut. I can do 2 or 3 or 4 passes to get down to the depth I want. I don't have to do it all in one go. So in fact I think probably those 2 passes will be enough. And I'm going to come back and do the other side now. And now you can see I've got a groove all the way down the middle. Once you have your V-groove, you need to smooth it and straighten it. So you take a biro, which will be our arrow, our bolt, and some coarse sandpaper, and just sand it back and forth. So here we have our groove for the bolt, and the bolt goes there. But what you'll find with this kind of bow, quite often, the string will not connect properly with the back of the bolt. So I'm going to put another channel on top of this, just positioned there. That's going to be the back, and then we're going to go up here. And then we can come up and like that. And again, we're just going to saw this out. And we're going to take our whole component to, I think around about here. So that is about 19 centimeters long. And there we have our top guide. We need to again put our groove into here. Exactly the same way as before. And there we have our groove in the top. Our top and bottom grooves want to line up. So, perfect. So what I need to do now is put 2 wooden pegs through here. So we will glue it and peg it, and that will make it strong. So I'm going to drill the holes through here. And then transfer those holes onto here, making sure that I have not drilled all the way through the stock. And again, we want another peg. Our peg is carved, and we're now going to put it into the first of the holes before we transfer the second hole. And we're going to cut that off. And now we're going to drill the second hole, making sure that these 2 pieces are lined up straight. Just going maybe a centimetre into the wood beneath. And there we are. So now we have the top rail, top guide, the main stock, and the trigger. So you can see everything's tight and everything's fixed. The only thing that's glued is the trigger at the moment, just so that's not going to move. So now we have to make the bow that's going to go in the front. I have a piece of thin ash here. You could use bamboo cane, glass fibre fencing rod, a steel ruler of the right size, anything you can find really. But I'm going to turn this into a bow sort of the easy way. So we're going to find the centre line, and I'm going to mark 15mm off, and then 5 on each end. There we are. And I'm going to draw a line between those, and I'm going to saw very carefully to that line. And this here will become our bow. We have our bow. You can see it flexes. So we've got to cut some knots into the end, and those are little grooves here, sloping back slightly, and that is what is going to hold the strings. Being careful, careful. I'm using a short bladed knife here because it gives me a great deal of control. And now I'm very simply going to tie a knot in the end of this string. Nothing clever at all. If you want to splice it, give you a much nicer, much better result. But that's a little bit of a skill in its own right, and that's one to have a look on the internet for. So that's the first one, easily done. You can see now that pulls and doesn't slip off. That's what you want. So we now need to put the knot on the other end so that the bow is flexed a little bit in that position. So I'm just going to pop it on there. But when we tie that knot, don't forget, it's going to effectively make that shorter. So I'm just going to slip it a tiny bit there. So I'm going to call that about done. Just pinching it so nothing moves. And now I will loosely tie that again. It's just string, you can always have 2 or 3 goes at it if you need to. Slipping the string back on. Now I'm putting the heel of this bow just against my hip here, pulling up on the middle of the bow, pushing down on the limb tip. And there we have a nice gentle curve. And there is our bow. But we need to mount that now into our stock. So this bow is going to fit about here. So I need to cut a little slot in this stock that the bow can seat into between these 2 pivots. So structurally it's not so important at that point. And what I'm going to do is just cut 2 little slots down, trying to cut them exactly the right width for that bow. The bow is now fitted into the groove that we cut. If it's a little loose, just put a layer of tape on it. But there's one more thing we need to do. I've made this bow to suit biros to shoot pens or pencils. Now, if I put it in there, you can see that the back of this pen can go all the way past the trigger. It won't shoot then. So we need to put a little stop in here that stops the bolt going all the way back over the trigger. And we do that by drilling another hole just there in front of the trigger. You can see that's where the trigger is. That's where I'm going to drill this hole. And we're going to drill the hole and put another wooden peg in, but just deep enough that it stops the bolt sliding back. So I'm going to put that in, drill the hole, and it's gone into the groove there. So I'm just going to put another wooden peg in. And you can see here, there is that peg that just stops the bolt, or the pen, or the pencil, going any further down. It can no longer go all the way to the bottom. It goes here. So we'll put that back together, and that's why we didn't glue it together before, just to make sure everything works. Now then, let's shoot it. Just a piece of insulation here, but old cardboard box will be fine. Open the trigger up a little, put the butt against your hip, and just slide back with both thumbs until it's in the notch. So it shoots very nicely indeed. At the range. First up, the little one. And this I've shot for distance. It does about 30 meters, 30 yards. Doubt it'll stick in. No, but you know, good enough for your cardboard nights. Now the big one. Shot this for distance with a 50-gram bolt. I think it's about 2.5 ounces. It does about 75 meters, 75 yards. So you can see it's accurate enough. And it's fun, and it's cheap to make. And if you can't get bungee, luggage tie-down straps. So last of them, let's see how we do. And there we are. What's that? Hup. So that was a group about that big, you know, not bad for a bit of rubbish. Go and make them. And if you can't work out the plans, go check in the description. You'll find a link to the plans there. Enjoy.